With the race of the remaining F1 seats for the 2023 season already well underway, many drivers are aware that they must improve their performances or risk being pushed out of the sport. Nevertheless, today's Formula One grid is brimming with talent. Even the so-called paid drivers, who provide valuable sponsorship, have worked their way up through the Junior Formula E. However, this has not always been the case. F1's history is littered with drivers who are often more of a danger than a competitor on the track. So join us as we look down memory lane at 5 of the worst drivers to ever grace the F1 grid. Number 5. Alex Yoong. After relatively little success in Formula 3, Formula 3000, and Formula Nippon, Yoong became the first Malaysian driver to compete in F1. Minardi Sporting Director Rupert Manwaring paid Yoong a visit while in Malaysia to meet with potential backers for a Formula One seat. By the 5th of July, Yoong had received sponsorship money from the government-backed Magnum Corporation, estimated to be worth $5 million by the Singapore Straits Times. The true figure was never made public. He took part in a 2-day test at Mugello, becoming the first Malaysian to do so, and the FIA granted him his super license. Yoong made his Formula One debut in place of Tarso Marquez at the Italian Grand Prix. Yoong's running was limited during Friday practice due to electrical issues, and Saturday free practice was cut short due to gearbox trouble. He did not complete a flying lap during qualifying due to gearbox issues, and had to share the spare car with teammate Fernando Alonso. Yoong dropped out of the race in 15th place. Yoong retired from the next race in Indianapolis after 38 laps due to a gearbox failure and finished 3 laps down later at Suzuka. 2002 was not kinder to the Malaysian. Utterly outclassed by new teammate Mark Webber, Yoong found himself replaced by none other than Anthony Davidson, ending his F1 career with 0 points scored. Number 4. Marco Apachella. Marco Apachella made the list because he holds the record for the shortest Formula One race career in history, although actually that isn't entirely true. We'll explain later. Apachella's strong performances in Japan in 1992 and early 1993 earned him a seat in the Jordan Formula One team for his home race in Monza in the 1993 season, with team boss Eddie Jordan keen to try out young Formula 3000 drivers. He took over for Thierry Boutsen. Before the race, Apachella also tested the Jordan 193 car at Imola. In Monza, he qualified 23rd, half a second behind teammate Barrichello, who set his times later in the session after the previously rain-soaked circuit had partially dried out. Apachella retired at the first corner of the first lap of the race after a multi-car collision. He was then replaced in the following round in Portugal by Emanuele Naspetti. As a result, he is mistakenly thought to have had the shortest Formula One career of any driver, a record held by Ernest Loof. Apachella retired after 800 meters, while Loof's car broke down as it was pulling away from the starting line. Nevertheless, having the second shortest F1 career is not a sought-after title. Number 3. Giovanna Amati. There is no doubt that Formula One is a male-dominated sport, although there have been a number of female racing legends in other categories, such as Michelle Mouton in rally and Danica Patrick in NASCAR. F1 has not had the same luxury. All the more unfortunate is that the most recent female F1 driver has been, well, let's just say, not great. Giovanna Amati joined the Brabham team in January 1992 to partner Eric van der Poel after the team was unable to sign Japanese F3000 driver Akihiko Nakaya because the FIA did not recognize the Japanese F3000 series as a stepping stone in motor racing. The announcement of a female driver boosted the Brabham team's profile, but unfortunately, the reality was that Amati had little experience driving Formula One machinery prior to the first round in South Africa because mechanics were still working on her car. Amati's inexperience was evident on the track in South Africa after spinning 6 times during practice. She was unable to qualify after setting a time that was 9 seconds slower than pole sitter Nigel Mansell and 4 seconds slower than teammate Van der Poel during qualifying. Amati had failed to qualify for the second consecutive race in Mexico, having set a time more than 10 seconds slower than Mansell. At the next race in Brazil, Amati again failed to qualify for the race, this time with a time of 11 seconds slower than Mansell in Friday qualifying. Saturday qualifying improved slightly, but Amati still did not qualify. Brabham fired Amati shortly after the race and replaced her with Damon Hill, which is probably the biggest swing in performance an F1 car has ever had to experience. Number 2. Takuya Inui. Inui was born in the Japanese city of Kobe. In 1988, he raced in the British Formula 4 Championship, then in All Japan Formula 3 from 1989 to 1993, and in the International Formula 3000 Championship in 1994. He raced in 18 Formula 1 Grand Prix events. His debut was a one-off race for Simtek at the 1994 Japanese Grand Prix, from which he retired. He spent the next year at Footwork Arrows. But instead of his mediocre driving, he's perhaps best known for two bizarre incidents that occurred while driving for Footwork in 1995. The first incident occurred following a practice session in Monaco. While his stalled car was being towed back to the pits, it was hit by a Renault Clio course car driven by Gene Rignati, causing Inui to roll into the barriers. The second occurred during the Hungarian Grand Prix, which was broadcast live around the world. While attempting to assist the marshals in putting out the engine fire that had forced him out of the race, a safety car driven to the scene by a marshal hit him, injuring his leg, although he recovered in time for the next race. His teammate for the majority of the season was Gianni Morbidelli, but late in the season, Max Papis replaced Morbidelli and was occasionally outpaced by Inui. Inui lobbied Tyrrell for a drive for the 1996 season, but the team chose Okuyo Katamaya with his mild 7 sponsorship money from Japan Tobacco. Instead, he was announced as the driver for the Minardi team in January. However, one of his personal sponsors withdrew at the last minute, and Inui was forced to retire from F1. He retired from racing at the end of 1999 after a brief stint in sports cars, and now manages drivers in his own country. Inui is also known for his self-deprecating humor, having publicly declared himself the worst driver in Formula 1, admitting that he had no idea what a pit stop was at first, and stating in an interview with Top Gear magazine in 2015 that he was not good enough to drive an F1. Number 1. Yuji Eday. Yuji Eday, our second Japanese driver on the list, was one of the oldest F1 rookies to take the grid in 2006 at the age of 31. But that's not why his name will live in infamy, as Eday was the only driver in F1 history to lose his super license for unsafe driving. He landed a spot at Super Aguri for the 2006 season, thanks in part to Super Aguri's desire to field an all-Japanese team. According to a press release, Eday had known Aguri Suzuki for a long time, but his fit with the team was hampered by his inability to communicate in English. Eday finished significantly behind his more experienced teammate Takuma Sato in his debut race in Bahrain. At the next race in Malaysia, he retired after 33 laps. During qualifying at the Australian Grand Prix, Eday was blamed for blocking Rubens Barrichello during his qualifying lap, causing the Brazilian to be stuck in the first round of qualifying and start 16th on the grid. Eday finished the race in 13th place, 2 laps down. His weekend in Melbourne was notable for a number of spins, and team principal Aguri Suzuki later suggested that Eday's seat was not safe unless his performances improved. At Imola, Eday collided with Christian Albers on the first lap, sending the Dutchman into a series of rolls that ended with Albers' car upside down. The stewards reprimanded Eday and warned him about his future behavior. Aguri Suzuki stated at the time he didn't have enough testing because he doesn't understand how to use the car. Super Aguri announced in May 4, 2006 that Eday would be dropped from the upcoming European Grand Prix at the Nürburgring due to FIA advice that he needed more experience. Franck Montagny, the team's third driver, took his place, and Eday was demoted to his spot. The FIA revoked Eday's FIA Super license on May 10, 2006, effectively ending his F1 career for the 2006 season. Following the news, Super Aguri said that Aguri Suzuki and Aguri Company shall continue to seek driving opportunities for Yuji and hopefully a path back into Formula 1. Spoiler alert, that didn't happen, and Yuji Eday is still considered by some to be the worst F1 driver in history. What do you think of the drivers featured in this list? Have we left any out? Let us know in the comments down below.